Just after the day after my birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And my first thought was, what will happen to my son?
A woman and a mother of 5 children. But in 1979, there was not one woman in the federal parliament of Australia.
A lot of women leadership, but they're doing it quietly rather than being the one with the microphone. Empathy was what my job was. My job was to be there for them, to show up and not leave.
But what do I want to do and why do I want to do it?
Sallyanne, I would like to start with you. What's the burden of being a pioneer? What is the burden of being the first? What's the burden of being the one who would carve new pathways?
Well, I think we pretty much heard quite a lot about that in the last section, the challenges, and which was interesting. And just before I answer the question, I noticed that I was up there as the former almost everything that I've ever done. But I want to sit here today and tell you that I am still doing. I am the oldest person in the room. I challenged Jean. I asked her how old she was, and I'm 2 years older than her, so there. But I am currently on the University of Queensland Senate, elected by the graduates, and I'm on a couple of boards. And I say that all deliberately to say that it's really important, and we were talking about ageism earlier, that you can keeping on as long as you want to do it. The challenges. I would be less than honest, and I am, as a former politician, always very honest, to say that being the pioneer, or being the first, in many ways, obviously, was a burden and was difficult, but there were advantages. If you're in politics, local government as I was, you need media, you need attention, and it was much easier to get that as that rare phenomenon, a woman and a mother of 5 children, as I was then. And just a little bit of history, I was elected in 1979. It's hard to believe, because it's not that long ago, that in 1979 there was not one woman in the federal parliament of Australia. In Brisbane City Hall, where I was one of only 2 female councillors then, and now there are more female councillors than men, there was not a women's toilet outside the chamber. We used to have to get one of the blokes to stand outside and make sure there was nobody in there and then stand outside whilst we went. So it was a heavily biased, if you like, atmosphere against us. But I was brought up as one of 4 girls. I went to an all-girls school. My first job was as a reporter in the Brisbane Telegraph, and that was one of the few industries where women were equally paid with men. So I actually early on didn't see there were to be any burdens or challenges, and they did come as quite a surprise. And I was interested in Ashley saying how you have to, I think it was Ashley, fight your battles, because in the early days in the council, Russ Hinds was the Minister for Local Government. He would call me girly or pet. Now, I could have objected, which I did, but I wanted something from him. I wanted money, actually, when I was Lord Mayor for the council. So there was no point, and I understood where he was coming from. He was a good, old-fashioned country gentleman. I was 42, and he did see me as girly or pet, as uncomfortable as that might have been.
Thank you for sharing those stories. I want to keep the theme on politics. Lisa, I want to go to you. You had an interesting time as political staffer, and then thereon you have gone into work in public and private sector in many ways, and you lead charity organizations. So how have you observed the understanding of, because again, being a staffer, there are so many things you have to listen and then absorb and not react. So there are limitations. So how do you have dealt those situations for your role?
Thank you. I've held very, very different roles over the years. So accidentally ended out working for 2 prime ministers and a federal minister many years ago when I was quite young. And you're right, you're often in a room that's incredibly sensitive and policy sometimes being made on the fly and I probably appreciate that a lot more now that I'm in peak body and seeing policy on the fly and seeing how much it actually really impacts our communities, particularly from our place in the multicultural communities. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I've worked in politics, I've worked in government, I've worked in private enterprise, service delivery, and now peak body. And I think I've got a fairly good rounded perspective on things. And I think the thing that influences me the most is the system and needing to understand the system, and you need to work the system to be able to affect the change that we need in our society. So, and how you deal with that has to be different depending on who you're in the room with and how you wish to influence. But relationships and trust and patience is probably my best advice on that.
Thank you. I'm assuming everything is fine because we have the staffers here just serving us tea and coffee in the back. So I'm assuming everything is fine. Linda, I would want to go to you on the idea of, purpose and leadership. You have talked about, how do you have a set of values which are purpose-led, and how has those values evolved as a strategist for you, and how do you see them both going in roles which are technical for you versus, which are more soft or more culture-oriented roles?
Okay, so firstly, maybe I should say that I've had the absolute privilege of working for the health and the industrial corporate sectors, and more recently working with small, medium businesses and early stage companies that are solving real economic and social challenges, I guess. And I would say that over the last 40 years, I've observed that leadership isn't about gender or position, it's about responsibility. Now, to answer your question, I remember in the early 90s, maybe mid-90s, remember when affirmative action came out? I had my first senior leadership role. To be honest, I hadn't even noticed that I was the only female in the room. I just thought we were a bunch of people trying to solve problems. It wasn't until I was appointed then the affirmative action, which was really just all about measurement. And it really did come to the front of mind around where we were. And that was, I think, and it was broken up, but the one number I remember was 11%. And now I think we've come a long way. Progress has happened. So over those 40 years, I've seen meaningful progress. And that should be acknowledged. But progress doesn't mean completion. So I think we've got a long way to go, and I think that my leadership style is more, and I think it's a balance between being able to be strategic and have those softer skills in there. And I would say that I am probably strategic, very market anchored in my leadership style, but I love aligning that vision, the market and the people to get real performance. And that is generally leading from the back once you've given which I think is a more softer approach to how we corral people and lead them, and we all can land at the vision at the same time and get real performance.
Thank you. Chitrani, I want to come to you on the work you do within disability advocacy work, in the disability advocacy space, and you try to support people get their plans and get the funding right for them, which is well needed. How has that intention of doing advocacy work evolved for you? How has that, where it started essentially?
Well, I got into the advocacy space because of my own personal experience as a result of my son's car accident, and he became a quadriplegic. And I realized that there's a lot of things that we had to figure out that no one ever told us. So we faced a lot of challenges, barriers, and I realized that there's lots of other people that go through the same process with no support whatsoever. And that's how my advocacy started in this space. And especially in the NDIS space, I do a lot of work, especially a lot of mothers reach out to me understanding that when something happens, when something drastic happens in their lives, the first thing the system does is they take their hope away and they just tell them what they cannot do. So it happened to us, it happened to my son because he was in the third year of medical school and he said, you'll never become a doctor, you will never be able to do this, but they tell us what we cannot do, they never tell us what we can do. So my main aim with advocacy is I try to empower them, I try to give them hope, I try to navigate through the system so they can find their way the best they can.
Thank you. Just to, if you not have heard about Dinesh is Johnny's son, Dinesh Palipana. He is an emergency doctor at Gold Coast Hospital. So he's been very, very well featured on ABC and multiple news stories. If you got a chance to have a read about, he has done a book as well. But that's not, this panel is not about him, but just giving a size for him. I want to come back to Sallyanne. When you are working with diplomats of different countries, and then you are interacting, and how do you see Australia fare in terms of balancing the scales or having more female diplomats leading those conversations across countries?
It's a very difficult question, not one that I think I can really answer, because in many ways, because of the opportunities women have here, the education women have here, women from other countries' perspectives seem to do it pretty well. And I just think, for example, of the University of Queensland, where we're about to have a female chancellor, we have a female deputy chancellor, we have a female vice chancellor, and many of our senior executives are women. There are many other ways, though, of course, and we all know about those. I grew up in Sri Lanka, which had the world's first female woman Prime Minister, Mrs. Bandaranaike. So those countries will say, oh, well, we had a female Prime Minister long before you did. I also want to say, this is not answering your question, Dev, but I was the first female Lord Mayor, but I'm the only female Lord Mayor of Brisbane so far. And I'm looking around this room and I'm looking at a lot of you to say it's about time we had another. Not at the moment, Adrian. I'm not suggesting anybody should topple you off your job, but I would like to think that because local government is a wonderful area for women. It's not all that shrieking and yelling down. I was never attracted to the idea of standing up in Parliament House and yelling at each other. You actually get things done. You're making a city. You're affecting people's lives. So that's a small commercial to say, I would like to see another female Lord Mayor of Brisbane, please. No, sorry, what was your question? Okay. Sorry, Jean, you and I are
good answer. Good answer. Good answer.
Is that all right?
That's a good answer. Thank you. Thank you, Sallyanne. I was intentionally asking about female diplomats when you are interacting with global leaders across countries, and how does Australia fare in that point of view, that leadership in that space?
I went to Paris some years ago as the first female trade commissioner that Australia had had in Europe. And there were very few female ambassadors. I can't even think of any, actually. But now there are lots of female ambassadors in lots of different places. So many people in the world know of Australian diplomats being female. So that's how they see us. And as I said, they do see us as a land of opportunity, if not actually equality. And we have to get out and grab it. And that's why I'm so delighted to be here today, you know, as the mother of four daughters, grandmother of 8 girls, one of many sisters. The female power is tremendous, and it really is important to be harnessed, and that's what we're doing with the energy in this room, Dev.
Thank you. Thank you, Sallyanne. I want to go to Linda. This question is from the floor. What challenges do any of you or you foresee or considerations and advice for women specifically would you provide with respect to particularly to your sector that may be caused by or the result of inevitable transition of AI?
Well, I'll say I'm not particularly from a specific industry, but if you were talking about the sort of market that I'm working in at the moment, very affected by AI. So working with early stage startups, actually I was just saying to someone that Advanced Queensland just had their first for 2026, 50 cohort for the Ignite commercialisation program that just kicked off last week. And I would say the predominant, as in there's lots of sectors that are represented, probably more than 75% would be tech-led. And out of that 75, probably there's about 50% that's very much AI-generated new startup businesses. So there is going to be a huge impact from that perspective. I am also very confident that we've got fabulous representation as far as female founders in that group as well. So just to add to that, but I think the impact of AI is going to have, I think, enormous, both positive, and sometimes I get fearful that there's some negative aspects of AI that also will come with that. Does that?
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. I think that suffices. Lisa, I wanted to go to you on, because you lead a community organization, it's a peak body called Ethnic Community Council. And then when you go out in communities and interact with people of different communities and leaders, how do you see the dynamics in those rooms? Because one of the probably key outcomes you might have to create using deep listening and understanding the communities very well. So how do you do that process effectively in your role?
Good question. I think there's about 2 questions in that, and I'm going to answer it in 2 separate ways. So the dynamics when I'm out there talking to community, I just want to note something in particular. And often we find that the leaders who are at the front anyway, who are with the microphones, largely men. And I note that usually it's the women who have probably organised most of it. They've been there from the beginning of the day preparing, and they're usually the ones in the kitchen and making it all come together. So I just want to note that there's a lot of women leadership, but they're doing it quietly rather than being the one with the microphone. And we need to be pushing, helping those women to be able to have opportunities to come forward. But with regards to deep listening, being peak body, I think it's really, really important that we do deep listening. And what I'm usually looking for is when lack of understanding starts happening, when in conversations they're talking about the complexity and having difficulty navigating something. And that's usually where the policy, I guess, lever is that we need to adjust. So it's my job to completely understand it and not jump too quickly. Recently, giving you a bit of context, I went and met with one of the ministers, and I was talking about the large number of suicides within our international students, particularly from one ethnic background in particular. And he asked for a paper on it, and I said, I'll do a paper on it, but before I do, I want to actually go and do a lot more consultation and make sure I've got the breadth of different community perspectives. So you've got to do that. And I was talking to my team afterwards and just going, I'm so pleased we actually did broader and deeper listening to completely understand the issues. And we've ended up doing 3 policy papers, one to the federal government owning the visa side of things, the state government and Brisbane City Council here, because there's a lot of learnings and, that deep listening is incredibly important if you want to affect policy, because you need to be able to say that story back to the people who own the policy and who can change the levers to make the difference that we need.
Thank you, Lisa. Chitrani, I want to come to you because you are doing 2 things at the same time. You are doing pro bono advocacy work for families and individuals who have disabilities and advocating for them. Parallel, you're running your own business to be commercially viable, to run plan management from a disability sector point of view. So how do you balance these 2 scales between the commerciality of running a business versus, how far do you go pro bono? How do you define that line?
Well, I mainly do plan management to support my pro bono advocacy. And my bread and butter is I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor. And I just realized that there are so many gaps in the system and there are so many people that go without because they really don't understand where to find help and what support is available to them. Also, sometimes they also say like bad things happen when good people do nothing. So I realize money should not be the only object here, and if you can do something, if you can give something, to someone that would actually help them get back on their feet, that is my biggest satisfaction of the day. I manage them both, and I must say I'm also a full-time mom. So, like, usually I enable. Because I'm sorry, Dave, even though you said, like, can we talk without talking about Dinesh? Our lives are so intertwined, and I cannot, explain myself without bringing him into the picture. Like, this morning, we woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and he's waiting outside because I couldn't get him in. It takes a long time. It takes about 3 hours to get him ready in the morning. And if I have to get him out of the car, I won't be here on time either. So, and managing a business and playing that role as a full-time mom and also trying to help others who are reaching out day and night. I really don't know sometimes how I do it, but I do it because there's a massive need for it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I don't actually. I have to forget myself to put myself out there for others.
Thank you. I was trying to honor you. Dinesh goes multiple keynotes every year. He's everywhere. So his story is out there so many times every month. So I just wanted to honor you. That's why I said that. Apologies for not excluding your son. Sallyanne, we have a question from the floor for you. The question says, as the first in many roles and the stresses and the stress that comes with that, what strategies did you use to ensure that you found time for your self-care?
I'm not sure there were actual strategies, but I just did. I tried to walk every day and to eat sensibly. I think the important thing when you're in a sort of a stressful job, and there's been a lot of talk about this, is making sure the people around you are good people and well supported so that they can support you. And as I've said, I had 5 children. I still have 5 children, sorry. Anyway, have 5 children and a husband who was a neurosurgeon, so he was very busy and not there and not really supportive, which is not a criticism of him, but back in the day, he used to boast he had 5 children and never changed a nappy, which he thought, and so did his mates, was a good thing, a sort of badge of honour. But nowadays, of course, you wouldn't get away with it. So I think one of the things when you've got multiple layers to your life is you really have to sort it out for yourself because there's no template and everybody's different and everybody's children are different. My children were brought up to be very independent, so much so that they all support different political parties, some that I like and some that I don't. The parties, not the children. I discovered actually early on in their school days when I found somebody's school lunch still in their school bag that night that they could all make their own lunch from then on, and they always did. So you've got to find little, it's not actually strategies, but little, not in your terms at least, but you've got to find little ways of doing things for yourself. I learned meditation early on when everybody thought it was very nutty. I've still found it very, very difficult. I made sure I did the things that I liked doing, which is reading, which turned out to be educational. I've resisted taking up bridge, which all my friends play, and I'm even told by my geriatrician is good for the brain, but I'd rather read a good book. So I think you just have life strategies all the way through which stand you in good stead. And just answering a question that I was not asked about leadership, but I mentor the young women at Women's College, and one of them, who is a leader in her section, was saying, what do you do when people criticise you for what you're doing, which is, of course, inevitable when you're a leader. And the most important thing is to believe why you're doing it. You're a leader not just because you've risen up through the ladder or through the ranks. You're a leader because you believe in your role, you believe in the organisation, and you believe that you're doing what you're doing, why, and in that way, you really can resist criticism.
Thank you, Sallyanne. I want to come to Lisa for this question from the floor. In workplaces where young women feel intimidated or overshadowed by male leadership, what practical steps can leaders take to genuinely empower and elevate their voices?
As a female, and I don't intentionally do this, but I do actually identify young women who I can see potential in and just guide them in a nice, gentle way. I think some people think of me as being a little bit motherly, and I'm not trying to be motherly in the way that I do it, but often men describe me in that way, which potentially isn't a good thing. But I don't like to use and encourage people to go with the system. I like them to be able to be strong in themselves and to reflect on their strengths and the way and the style that they would like to lead or rise up. You often hear about executive presence and, you know, how you have to learn executive presence, and it's the way you hold yourself, it's the way you speak, those sorts of things. I'm sorry, I just think it's a load of codswallop, and to me that is you being not your authentic self. Mm-hmm. And so I think we as women should be supporting other women by guiding them through their strengths rather than trying to make them fit within a mould. I've worked in government, I've worked in politics. That executive presence or thereabouts is everywhere, and it's generally led by the men. So I think we need to break through that and just be ourselves.
Thank you, Lisa. I want to go to Linda. You work with a lot of upcoming CEOs, and then you mentor a few. And what do you see a common thread in terms of the roadblocks they face into the as they hit a plateau and they feel very lonely, and when they're at executive level, they don't have enough people to talk to and interact with, and hence they seek mentors to give them guidance. What, in your observation, as you talk to senior leadership across sectors, what are the first roadblocks they see which hits on the plateau of growth?
I think change is probably the most common challenge across all of the CEOs. So I mentor and coach and chair like a group of CEOs who, and it is lonely in a position when you're CEO or a business owner of a small business, even a startup. So I feel like how we can actually help with that is just having proximity. Proximity in that we can be the role model, we can not direct, but to ask the right questions so that people and pose and challenge those questions back, or to, again, proximity of similar people where they can actually challenge each other, learn from each other's experiences, etc. So that warms my heart knowing that I can actually help with that. Because I do think sometimes, and I'll be really honest, and I've even said it to my group of CEOs, sometimes when I have a speaker come in there's a new regulatory change or there's just managing staff these days is way more complex and probably has become more complex since COVID. But sometimes after having a speaker and hearing them speak, I can't believe sometimes that they're still so positive. And I'm a positive person. I just go, my goodness, how you can wake up with all the amount of change that's going in the world. It's so rewarding to have a network of support for people that are facing those same challenges.
Thank you, Linda. Chitrani, I want to come back to you. In the last couple of years, your journey has become more challenging because you have a health issue and a health challenge, but you're still working and operating your business and doing advocacy and the pro bono work you're doing. Could you just, if if you would like to share that story.
Yeah, I believe that sometimes living the moment is the best way to go. And I heard before someone was asking what's your strategy. I think there is no strategy. And on top of everything that has happened to us as a small family unit, like my only son meeting with the becoming a quadriplegic as a result of a spinal cord injury, and also his dad walking away, and we were managing on our own. So we thought like, okay, we're just getting somewhere. And to top it, last year, like just after the day after my birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So, yeah. And my first thought was, what will happen to my son? Because I'm his full-time support. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to get through this, right? Because that's the only way. That's the only way. And so I went through chemotherapy, not chemo, just radiotherapy and everything, and I got all clear. And the other day, someone was asking me, thank you. And I've forgotten all about it because, you know, there's other things that goes through my life and other people who reach out to me. I realize that people go through much bigger things than I do, so I don't compare, and I don't think I have gotten through something worse, but lots of people go through many, many things that are far more worse than mine, and I thought I'd get back into business and keep going. And to top it, like how I got that strength, if you were wondering, like when my son was in the ICU, his 10th day of his accident, my mom came from overseas to visit me. So she came straight to the hospital. And then I saw her, you know, she put her bag down and she cried with Dinesh for like good 10, 15 minutes. Then, then she stopped crying. Then she got back to business. So when we were going home that night, I started crying. She yelled at me. She said, "What are you crying for? Who's going to look after your son? If you just fall into pieces, there's no one that's going to be there for him." So I picked up on that courage, and to date, I just go by that advice that she gave me. Whatever happens, you have to get up and go. Yeah.
Well, I can't. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story.
That's okay.
Thank you. I think we all value you sharing that story with us. I want to go with Lisa here, and I want some concluding remarks on the intention of being courageous at the same time, and having that empathy of what you're doing, which Chitrani talked about. And then how do you lead in those scenarios when things are difficult?
Yeah, I've got so much respect for you. I'm very pleased to be sitting here next to you. Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit upset by listening to it. I think this year has been particularly difficult year. It's only just the beginning of March, and I can't tell you what we've gone through as an organisation, but about a month ago now, I actually got a phone call from the clinical manager at our residential aged care facility, and she said how one of our staff had collapsed and that the team were working on her, and they've called the ambulance. I was in West End, our facility is in Indooroopilly, and I just grabbed my handbag, and as I was talking to her, I was getting in the car, hung up from her, rang my HR manager, said, "Get in the car, meet me there, this is what's happening." Rang the chair of the board, said, "This is what's going on." And then I rang my husband and I went, "Holy shit, I'm the CEO and I'm meant to know what to do, and this is what's going on right now, and I don't think this staff member's going to live. What am I meant to do?" And then he didn't even answer. I said, "It's okay, I've just voiced what I need to voice." And then I just got there, and empathy was what my job was. My job was to be there for them, to show up and not leave. I was the last person out of there. I was not going to leave until Wendy left the building. I was there with her children and met them at the door. And I didn't have to step up. I just needed to be there to hear them and to allow the staff come through and pay their respects to her. And I don't know, they just, my love and respect for my team is unbelievable. Like, I just want to share with you that it was a fairly long, it happened early in the afternoon and we didn't leave until quite late that night because it was an unexpected passing, so we had to go through the process and we weren't allowed to move her body, and it's in the middle of the floor. So privacy, and that was amazing, but the way the residents in the facility, how they honoured and respected our team and staff member, but how they actually honoured and respected one another as well. A lot of the staff came in off shift. We probably had, I don't know, I didn't realise at the time until leaving, probably around 50 staff, and this was around 10, 11 o'clock at night when Wendy was taken outside. I went downstairs with her sons and all of them were lined up with a guard of honour for her. So I think I tell you this story just because of I didn't see my role as being a leader, but my job was to support them in the best possible way that I could, and by being there was essential at the time, but then being there after the fact was essential as well, making sure that they had the necessary supports to be able to recover. And that's my job, is listening, understanding what's needed, and then giving them what they need to be able to move forward as humans.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that story. Very intentful for sure. Linda, can I ask you to give your final remarks on the, when you are a leader and you are lonely, you have to take decisions which are cut through, non-empathetic, just go for the bottom line. And on the other side, when you are leading for purpose or not-for-profit organization, you are trying to balance the two of, can I be profitable or can I, keep the lights on? And keep on serving the people I want to serve. So from a strategic point of view, how do you see those balance happening?
I think in the past when we talked about not-for-profits, it's the wrong word, because if you're not making profit, you can't help more people. So I almost don't distinguish between a full commercial operation, PTY Ltd versus a not-for-profit. And I think it's become more important because in the past, not-for-profits had a very defined, particularly industry associations, etc., had a very defined purpose in that they were the holders of all the information. Mm-hmm. Now information is democratised, and making those organisations that were there initially irrelevant. So I think there is a lot of relevance that needs to come back, and technology change as well, other than just the internet. But I'm always looking at the commercial perspective and always balancing that. But I certainly have learned, having run not-for-profits and being in a full commercial, is that we need more profit to make more impact in the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. My concluding question to Sallyanne, it's a political one. Federal Parliament, on one side of politics, we have majority females as member of parliamentarians, and on the other side of politics, they are less than majority or not equal female parliamentarians in the federal parliament representing all Australians. How do you see that imbalance or balance, the way it works or the way it doesn't work politically and for Australians?
It works. It works. What we need is for more women to want to go into Parliament, and that really is the key of it. They have to want to do it. I don't believe in quotas because you don't get first-rate people who want to do things. So I think that the whole political system is frankly so awful. Pre-selection on both sides of politics is really very inefficient. And I think that we're not going to get more women in Parliament until we make, or government generally, and I really, as I said, would be pushing local government at all times, but we're not going to get women into politics until politics becomes more attractive.
And if people are thinking of, they are in that initial journey of putting the first step forward towards, let me start with local council, and then let me go state, and then we go federal. What's the first step one should take towards thinking that I want to get into politics, let me start with my local council?
No, I think that's the wrong attitude. I want to get into politics, therefore I will start with my local council. I don't believe you just think you want to go into politics as though politics is a career, because very few people actually understand what it actually is, or even think about, or they think it's like we were talking earlier, Jean, about women on boards. Women think being on a board is the acme of your business success. No, no, no. Boards do not run companies. The senior executives run the companies. The board is there to monitor and make sure they do the job properly. And so it is, and I have always been strongly antagonistic to people going into local government as a stepping stone to state or federal government. Decide what is your interest and do that. And go into politics because it fulfills the sorts of things you want to do. Being a local government councillor is very much like being a social worker. Or in my case, it was very much like being a reporter. You listen to people's problems, you write them down, and you try and solve them. Federal government is quite a different proposition. I, showing my age, once met Maggie Thatcher very informally in Canberra when she was out here as leader of the British opposition. And she said, why don't you go into politics? I never even thought about it at that stage. But I had 5 small children, and I live in Brisbane. It was easy for her, as she pointed out to me, because she lived in London, she had twins, and she had a very supportive and retired husband. So it's not always attractive for women. I admire, and I don't know how they do it, those women who go into federal politics from far-flung regions like West Australia or Queensland, because all that travel, it's very disruptive. But you've got to think about not, I want to go into politics, but what do I want to do and why do I want to do it?
Thank you, Sallyanne. Everybody, can we please join in thanking Sallyanne, Linda, Lisa, and Chitrani?